New Year, everyone. Welcome to the first gathering of the Kaipara District Council for 2022. Today is the Kaipara District Council briefing on the 2nd of February. So this is, as I say, the first gathering of the council. At this point, we have many of the councillors present in the room here in Dargaville. We are being joined online by Councillor De La Varas Woodcock, Morena councillor, and at this point we do not have Councillor Joyce Paki either in the room or online that we can see. So, but we nevertheless will be making a start this morning, so I will just open this morning's proceedings with a karakia. Kia horo te marino, kia whakapapu poinamu te moana, hei hoa rahi ma tātou I te rangi nei, araha atu, araha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa. Thank you. For our briefing this morning, our first item is the annual plan 2022-23. And for this item, we are being joined by Tracy Dean and Ruby Mitchell, both of whom are on the screen. Morena Korua, and this is to lead us through the annual plan, communications plan item. Thank you.
Morning everyone. We're a step further on preparing the annual plan for year 2 of the long-term plan. You'll recall that in December the proposed changes to the plan were brought to you and decisions were made around what changes to include in the plan. Finance is now working through those changes, and while the comms plan gives an indication of progress, it's important to note that those figures are not finalised yet. They'll be brought in a report to you in the March briefing. Based on those proposed changes in December, you also made the decision not to consult. Comms have now prepared a high-level communications plan to inform our community. It's attached to the report and is the focus of today's briefing. I'll pass you over to Ruby Mitchell now to take you through that.
Good morning, Morena, everybody. I'm going to take the report, the attachment and the presentation as read. I plan to run through the slides and then I'll ask for any feedback at the end on the communication plan. So there are some proposed changes to the long-term plan that are really important for us to share, with the committee ahead of the annual plan being adopted. The changes to the long-term plan are driven by 3 key factors that we have identified. They're central government legislated requirements, the cost of doing business, and meeting the needs of our district's growth. Even though there are no new choices for the community to make, and consultation is not occurring on this annual plan, we will be clearly communicating these changes and the drivers behind them in the coming months so that all of our communities are informed. They're informed around their impact and they understand what it means for their rates. We'll also be sharing updates and progress on some of the exciting projects that are lined up for this coming year. We've highlighted some of the key ones in the slides here, which will be communicated as part of the annual plan campaign. But please note that many of our projects have their own communications plan. We're going to be using multiple channels and ways to inform our community. This includes our platforms such as our local papers right across the district. We'll be sharing media releases on projects. We'll be sharing updates through our fortnightly back pages. Our social media channel will host our social media video content from the elected members, and it will also have other informational posts. Our Kaipara Kōrero e-newsletter will contain articles and links to project updates. We're also going to be utilising other channels like our quarterly rates newsletter, some radio campaigns and more. As you can see, we've lengthened the period since we last shared the proposed timeline for communications. So we'll be sharing information and updates all the way through to the annual plan being finalised and approved in late June. Thank you. We'd love to hear any feedback from you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruby, thank you, Tracy. So elected members, so I guess at this point we need to be focusing on the communication plan aspects here rather than the what we like or don't like in the annual plan, right? So if we could just remain focused on that, please, but open to any questions at this point. Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Morning, Ruby. Look, you've mentioned that one of the communication channels you'll be looking at is the quarterly rates newsletter. I've always questioned whether or how much notice in the community is taken of that, or is that just binned when people get their rates invoices? But over the Christmas break, I had 2 or 3 people actually mention how much they got out of the quarterly rates newsletters. And these were people who were either non-resident ratepayers or just recently moved into the district. And so they were new to the rates letters. And that's something that they don't get in Auckland, which they said they thought this was a really good positive thing for Kaipara. So I think that's a very important avenue. And what I'd ask you to think about is making that particularly detailed, making it graphic, making it very user-friendly, if you like, because we can use that as a platform and we can actually also spin that document out through social media and other places for people who are perhaps not ratepayers and who wouldn't normally get the letter with the rates invoice in it and this newsletter with it. So can you think about, putting that all together into something that really makes that a very strong statement that people can get from council?
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Withey.
Thank you, Councillor Curnow.
Mine is, it's not really a question. It's more on the graph and the changes between long-term plan and annual plan. It's really helpful past the first bar. The first bar, the way the graph reads to me is the blue things are where we're increasing, and that's the percentage that we've increased, and the orange things are where we've decreased. But the first blue bar looks like going 7% or 7.13% over what was in the LTP. So it's maybe, I don't know, just look at that graph in terms of, and I see sort of you've got the grey bar on the other side, but I didn't even see the grey bar until miles after. So my initial reaction was, holy heck, that doesn't look good. So if it was possible to just make that graph so that it's really clear that the difference between the LTP and the annual plan is minimal, like what we're talking about at the moment is a 0.04 change, but that may shift. But yeah, just to be really clear that what that's saying.
Thank you. I've also got a point and it's just to come in on the 0.04% rate increase. Based on $350,000, that's $14,080 spread across the entire district. So maybe that a sense of what the quantum of dollars is, because as well as the percentage, if you like, that remembering that 1% equals approximately X amount, 350K, because 1% of rates in Auckland is a lot more than $350,000. So what kind of that sense of what people get for their money, but also exactly how many dollars that is, because if you go, well, we're now spending $14,000 more than we said we were going to do, for example, with this current target, and I appreciate there may be further savings found, and I hope so, between now and May, that the notion of how many dollars that actually is for most people would be, I think, of interest as well, or dollars that isn't Yeah, thank you, councillor Wilson Collins, then councillor Wethy, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And then councillor De Lavaris Woodcock.
Thanks, Ruby and Tracy. I just wanted to agree with what councillor Curnow is and the Mayor is saying. I think it's really important to remember in our communications that the average person doesn't follow everything that we do, and there's already been a little bit of miscommunication amongst the residents that we've suddenly decided to increase the rates by 17 point whatever%. They don't realise that what's happening is actually it's just a change in what has already been decided and already consulted on. I think I recall some communication somewhere saying that we should be consulting on this change, whereas they misunderstood that it was actually a 7% change. So you just need to make that really clear of that it's just a tiny less than 1% change of what was already consulted on. We've already done the groundwork on it. And also just with the graph, it is very pretty, but I don't know that that's the best way to communicate to the people out there. It is a bit confusing if you're not following everything very closely. And I just think I'm not saying don't include it, but I just think if you can simplify the message and make the message very, very clear up front, and then maybe have some detail after that for the people that want to get into that detail. That's my feedback anyway. So thank you.
Thank you, councillor Wethy, then councillor De Lavaris Woodcock.
My comment here is, and this is probably something for Sue as well. When you look at our total rates revenue and looking at what our percentage increase is for the year, I would respectfully suggest that $14,000 or 0.04% increase is within the margin of error of doing our budgets. And I think we should seriously look, if we come in May at no more than the 0.04, I would say we can go out and basically say there's no change in what we said at 7.13, because I don't think our figures are as accurate as $14,000 in a rateable revenue of something over 35 million. Similar thing.
Interesting points. Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, then councillor Curnow, thank you, then councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor, my question is directed at the finance team. So I have 4 questions. Can everybody hear me? Can I have a hand?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Perhaps if we take them one question at a time, please. Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, thank you.
So the first question, this is for the comms team rather than the finance team. Does the government pay for the Three Waters comms?
So I'll just, I think what we're asking, because there was a reference in there to the Three Waters projects, and it's only a slight reference, because we don't know at the moment criteria is for those projects. So the money agreed mention of the Three Waters. So is that what you're asking? Because we're not doing stations of the Three Waters ourselves.
First of all, it's a bit unclear what you just said. Is that Sue?
Oh, Johnny Towns. Councillor, I'll try and recap what Sue said. She's a little far from the microphone.
Okay.
Sue mentioned that she just wanted to confirm you were referring to the reference to the Three Waters projects in this document.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so she's confirming that we're not doing any communication around the Three Waters programme. That's obviously not our place. However, this was just to highlight that as things currently stand, there has been some money indicated that would come to council if that was the direction we take. And that's the reference in the document. So it was just to give some clarity, but it's not around communicating the Three Waters programme, because again, that isn't our place as a council. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm a little bit perplexed, thank you, our Chief Executive, because it says the key projects that staff will do further work on the strategy to best meet the needs of both our rural and urban communities. And we will be communicating these changes. And then the Three Waters is listed as one of the key projects. So once again, I ask, is the government contributing? The reason why I'm asking this is because this is imposed upon us by central government. Why should the ratepayer wear the cost of implementing communication strategies for this unlawful divestment of our Three Waters assets? So first question, is the government contributing? And why is our council agreeing to undertake communications for this program, which I believe to be unlawful? And why are we not transparent and pointing out to our ratepayers this specific cost amount?
Thanks, councillor. Look, I think it's an error on our part. We should actually take out the reference to the Three Waters. We got a bit eager there because we believe the government is going to give us $4.1 million as promised on the 1st of July, but we haven't had the criteria and guidelines confirmed. I am looking at bringing a paper to a future briefing with potential, because the total is that we've been told will be 16.1 million over the next payable in 3 payments. So I think you're correct, we should take it out because we don't know yet. We haven't put the projects or the money or recognised the money in the annual plan for this year. So we'll take the capital projects out.
Thank you, Sue. That's quite helpful. But I also think that not to be omitted is our statutory obligation first to consult on these key projects, what's happening with our community, because we haven't done that. And I have not heard any assent or agreement from my constituents that they agree to the divesting of our assets, which are far in excess of the $16 million that our government is offering. So my question is, can you as the finance officer please refuse to accept any such payment because it's unlawful?
What's this got to do with the annual plan?
So no, so what this, so this is about the annual plan. So what we'll do is take out reference to it because we haven't got the detail confirmed. And you're right, it hasn't come to council yet. It's also my understanding that we have to liaise with iwi, and we, although the government has instructed us to start thinking about projects, which is what we are doing, it hasn't come to council, so we'll take out the reference in the annual plan because we haven't got the money provided for in there anyway.
So I'd like to remind councillors that for sort of this discussion that we're having now, it's about the comms plan. So it's what's in the comms plan or what's not in the comms plan. And it's probably less about why we want to be doing things or not, if you like. That was a discussion for a different day. Councillor De La Varas, thank you for your first question. Back to you for your second question, please.
Yes, so this is clarification for my understanding. As our land values increase, does this provide a correlating increase in rates income for the council without an imposed rates rise? Is that correct?
Yes, I can answer that one.
Oh, Graham Coleman, if you could answer that, please. Thank you.
Yes, so
Briefly explaining how the rates work.
yes, so in the calculation, we've got an allowance for 1% growth in the rates. So that takes into account the essentially the new properties that come on board with development, that sort of thing. So between the change between last year and this year's long-term plan was 8.13%, and with the 1% taken out, it goes down to the 7.13%. So that was our starting point. So there's a 1% allowance in there already.
So,
Right. Thank you, Graham. So am I right that the quotable value, the every triennium there's a new valuation done, and based on the land value policy, our rating instrument, there is a natural increase in the rates that each ratepayer pays by virtue of the fact that their land has increased in value. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct, because all we're doing is taking the total value of the district and then dividing that by the requirement for the rating requirement, and that works out how much rates you pay. So the land value only determines your portion of that rate, it doesn't automatically determine an increase in rates or result in an increase in rates. The council determines its rates requirement, and we just spread it based on the land value provided to us.
so Graham, so if all of the properties in Kaipara District were to increase at exactly the same rate of value increase, there would be no change to the rating, correct?
That is correct.
Yes, yeah, I'm just explaining that so that everyone's crystal clear.
Mr. Mayor, if this was a formal meeting, then I would be raising a point of order about relevance.
Thank you. And it's not a formal meeting. This is a council briefing, but the important thing is that we need to stay focused, please, on the communications plan.
Thank you.
So perhaps
Yes.
comms team needs to be aware that people out there may also not understand how rates work. Anyway, Councillor Tavares Woodcock, your next question, please.
Yes, my next question is, can the communications strategy include budgeting or a price amount for the amount saved by not operating as per usual? So the amount saved as a council by not using the same fuel for our staff, electricity, catering, photocopying, and attrition of staff members. I think it's important. So I would like to know, is that possible to have a reckoning of those cost savings in our communication strategy?
Thank you for an interesting suggestion. The comms team will pick that up and consider how best to incorporate those thinkings. Can we move to your next question, please, Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock?
Yes. This is my final question, and then I reserve the right to make comment when you call Mr. Mayor for the right time to make comment. So my final question is, can the ratepayers please be made aware through the communication strategy of the legal costs of the Mangawhai Central Private Plan Change 78 that is currently or due to occur in the Environment Court in April?
Thank you. Comment here from Sue Davidson, please.
Yes, that'll be part of the annual, and that actually pertains to the annual report, not the annual plan for next year.
Thank you. So that'll be in the annual report, different document. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock. Question, Councillor Curnow.
Yeah, I just wondered, so we've talked a lot about sort of the changes in the numbers, but is the idea in the consultation to focus on the changes in the projects and to show the shifts in numbers according to those different projects? Because, yeah, obviously, if we're not making a big change in the numbers, there are some big changes in here, but it's just that this is almost a zero-sum game. So is the intention to really focus on those?
Yes, there is. Yeah. So
Right.
we will be communicating those key changes, yeah, and explaining the impact and the reasons behind them.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you. So I have a question that goes back to what we were just kind of covering. How are the projects that are not ratepayer funded being discussed, or are they being discussed here at all? Such as Poto Wharf or whatever, for example. Yeah.
Some, the chair, they won't be discussed because they'll be completed, because a lot of the funding that we get runs out in June 22. So there are some continued, like the stock bank, Dargle, the Tokoro to Dargle, the Raupo stock bank. They are the two big ones. Poto Wharf at this stage is still online for being completed by the 30th.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just through linguistic, what we also do in the annual plan is have information about the projects that are ongoing, like externally funded projects. So they will be, so the ratepayers will understand.
Thank you. Thank you. It's clear. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions, or ones are questions. I see two key issues for the communications strategy to address. Is one is like 7% is still a lot of money. Like it's still a major increase, and I expect that will bring a reaction. And I think that we should be preparing for that reaction when it comes, when people get the bill in the mail. So that's one critical factor that I think that needs to address. And the other is also, I mean, we made our decision not to go through the formal consultation process last year. We made that decision. But I've already seen some criticism, and I expect there will be further criticism as the package unfolds, that we should be consulting. So I think we need to be prepared with an explanation as to why it is, like what the nature of the consultation process, and why it is that in the collective judgment of the council that it wasn't appropriate on this occasion. So some suggestions. Or I could put those as a question by raising the intonation of my voice at the end of it and invite a comment from staff on that.
Through which if I can, so obviously the decisions you made, all that information was previously provided to inform your decision. The COGS approach will reflect that, and in some ways the waterfall graph, feedback provided was a simple trying to get a way of trying to show that as well. So we'll include some commentary about that.
Thank you.
As far as your response as elected members, we just need to review the information provided previously. We may be able to put an elevator pitch for you as well. Just make it simple. Give constituents space.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification here? No questions. Thank you. At this point, Mr. Maris, the comms team, and Ruby, sorry, you're if you like, we've provided feedback here, but you're not seeking formal direction from the council here in the comms plan.
No, Your Worship, we're just taking the key points that you raised, and we'll incorporate the strategy.
Okay, thank you. Is there an opportunity for elected members to, because this isn't the strategy, or this is the strategy? Yeah. Is there an opportunity for elected members to provide additional, like, minor text changes or things like that? Is it relevant? Yes. Okay, so elected members may send that directly to Ruby, any minor text changes or so on to this document for clarity.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make my
sorry, excuse me, Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock and Councillor Wills, sorry. I'm just like points of clarity, such as key projects Raupo. Now, in that shorthand inside the council, yeah, Raupo is a cluster of 6 houses. Is that what we're talking about? No, it's the Rauport Drainage District significant new floodgate project. Yeah, so it's those sorts of points, if you like, that I'm making. So if anyone has those points for comprehension for the community to help us as elected members contribute to breaking down the shorthand in which we all speak, but that the community may get lost by, that would be helpful. That's what I'm calling for and suggesting for. I'll go to Councillor Wills and then Councillor De La Woodcock. Councillor Wills.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Mayor. No, I just, in the communications, and I do agree with the previous comment made, the 7% by itself seems significant, but if it could be included as part of the expected long-term plan where we were running back down to 5% over the 10-year period, that would be, I would appreciate if that could be included in the communications that goes out, that it's part of a projected lowering of the rates increases over the next 9 years. Also, there's a couple of key projects that possibly would be of interest to the community that aren't included in your key projects without trying to make the list too long. And one of them is that the roading funding, which has a significant effect on a lot of the metal roads in the community. If that possibly could be included as a highlight of some of the work, even though it's not our own money, it's still having a significant impact on the community, and it's a positive.
Sorry, so if I could just, for clarity, kind of say, in the next annual plan year, there's going to be X million of that PGF money spent on our council roads as an extra project on our unsealed road network.
Well, I mean,
in addition to what business as usual road money.
I mean, I don't want to make the key projects list become so long that it becomes a recital. It's just that that particular one, the significance of the money and the significance of the impact on the community probably may justify being included, but that's up to the comms team. It's only my suggestion. But the emphasis on the fact that we were looking at a 5% or less rates over the whole 10-year period is significant, and we need to include that to show our effort to contain our costs as a council, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor De La Woodcock. And then Councillor Weddy.
My statement is times are really tough.
Sorry,
So
Councillor De La Woodcock, we're not supposed to be making statements because it's not a formal council meeting.
Okay, this is my feedback.
It's not about speech, not about speeches. Thank you.
No, Mr. Mayor, this is my feedback for the comms team. I would like the comms to do a strategy that reflects that times are tough, that we're dealing with a 5.9% inflation increase, which is hurting households, the cost of food, the cost of fuel, the cost of rent. And we are putting up our rates by 7% without consultation. We need an absolute transparent strategy. Please let me finish. With a reckoning of the specific cost blowouts, such as the legal battle for private plan change 78 that this council approved and what that is costing us, and also costs saved due to COVID lockdowns. Our ratepayers will be expecting that because there has not been business as usual, there should be a concomitant and correlating saving. So we need transparent and accountable reckoning, budget lines, so we can see where our ratepayers' money is going. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Weddy.
Yep. Just one thing for the comms team to think about. It is not widely understood out in the community how much legislated requirement extra work is being put on local government by central government. You've qualified it, you've in there put a qualification in there. Is there any way you can actually give people in the district an idea of just how significant that is from a quantifiable point of view? Because I think that's quite important. We're seeing more and more central government initiatives that get laid on to local government, and we're having to absorb a lot of costs. And so I think it's important to note that. And on the question of the inflation figures, we're looking at the year starting 1 July when the inflation in New Zealand is projected to be over 5%. Council is not immune to inflation. We're being subjected to inflation as well. So if you really want to look at inflation, 5.9 projected, we're looking at a 7% rate increase. So our actual increase in rates after taking inflation into a point of view is only a bit over 1.5%. So.
Yeah. They're certainly very complex times. Councillor Curnow.
Just to make a quick comment following on from that, the inflation figures already include rates as well. That's one of the reasons why inflation is as it is, because rates are having to go up because of all these additional costs that we're facing. But coming back to this comms plan, I think it's a really good start. I think there is definitely an indication from around the table that there's an interest in seeing sort of almost like chapters on each of these separate parts. So there's detail provided so people can see really simply what the difference is between what we have already consulted on and what we're now suggesting. And then if they want to drop down to actually understand why that difference has occurred. And I think that's the direction that's already being described, Ruby. I'm pretty sure that's the direction you're already heading in. But yeah, so just really emphasising that simple top level and detail below, and the focus on what's the difference, not just in the money, but in the what people can expect us to be delivering against what we promised we would.
Yeah. And so, for example, you might also want to say that if we had proceeded with the waste minimisation recycling project for year 2 of the LTP, as in this year that we're just talking about, that people would have been facing potentially a 10% rates increase. And that was part of the decision that was made in December, was to move that project out because of all these other forced things that were in the picture, among a bundle of other things. Yeah. So we've tried to avoid a 10% rates increase in this work for this annual plan, with that one specific project being moved, which again talks to the fine-tuned nature for Kaipara, very different from Whangarei or different from Auckland, about how a large, perceptively large rates increase is actually very few dollars relative to other places and what that means. Thank you, Ruby. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Tracy, for this item.
Thank you.
So at this point, just waiting for the computer to warm up here, we will continue with Donick, Gavin, with our second item for today, with the SCADA project update. Thank you. Just calling him in now. Okay, thank you. This was a very alarming picture on page 10 of the agenda. A very, very alarming picture on page 10 of the agenda. It's like, oh dear, it looks like the old Paparoa telephone exchange used to be. We're patching you through now, caller. Donick Magutso, Morena, good morning. Nice to see you, sir. And thank you for being able to join us. So we're now starting this water supply SCADA report. Over to you. Thank you.
Morning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Happy New Year to you. So the council has approved a SCADA upgrade project. So today we are presenting our proposed approach to procurement and to lay out how we are going to be executing the work. So the procurement comes very close to the threshold of exceeding the threshold of the CE's approval. So we thought we would present it to you for transparency. The SCADA system has been failing, and it has caused a number of issues for our contractor and sometimes for our reporting. So this project is meant to address some of the issues that we've been having. It's not a total upgrade, because a total upgrade will be very expensive. But the main points that are going to be upgraded here are the data center. So the data center is going to be moved from those wires, the spaghetti wires that you saw, is part of our data center or our server, our central server in the Dargaville office, and that's going to be moved to a remote site. But this project will also coincide with the move to the new office. So we are utilizing that opportunity that while we move, then we also do that project at the same time. There will be certain things that we would have wanted to do that we will not be able to do at this time. The fail-safe, which is building another line to make sure that it's totally fail-safe, which is what Whangarei has, but that requires building a new communications line, which will make it unbearable in terms of expense. The intention is to mimic the Whangarei District Council's SCADA system. So we have a more uniform regional approach to SCADA systems, and would like to employ Mackay's and Neo Consulting to do the work. Neo Consulting work for water care, they work for Whangarei District Council, they work for the regional councils here, and also Mackay's are the incumbent. And from our research and history, we have noted that this specialized work has not attracted any other players other than the incumbent that we would like to work with. And it's also, they live here in the region, so it is, they are more agile and they respond quickly to issues. SCADA requires that sort of agility in order for us to comply with our water and wastewater requirements. With new legislation and the Water Services Bill, which is now an act, it requires us to monitor continuously, to monitor our systems continuously, and this SCADA system will be good for that work. I will stop here and thank you.
Thanks, Don. Elected members, are there questions for clarification? Councillor Withy.
Yeah, hello, Donick. Thank you. Look, I'm very supportive of this whole initiative because I think we have fallen behind current sort of technology, and this is a way of getting us back up. However, as we all know, Three Waters is something that's on the horizon, and on the assumption, and this is again an assumption that that goes ahead as is being projected by central government, this expenditure on the SCADA upgrade, will that be reimbursed to our council from Three Waters, because it will be part of the assets that go and be transferred?
I'm not able to answer that question at the moment, but I will answer it from a perspective of risk. In terms of the investment, we wouldn't be able, regardless of when the Three Waters transfer will happen, or if it happens, we will not be able to bear the risk between now and when that happens without upgrading our system. So we need to do that. Otherwise, we'll have more and more failures for compliance, for example, and fatigue for the workers that have to wake up in the middle of the night to respond to false alarms, which has actually been happening.
Well, look, I don't in any way deny that it's a necessary thing to proceed as quickly as possible. But I'm just saying this is a capital project that, assuming Three Waters does come in a year or two, it's if we've borrowed money to fund this, then we're ending up with a lot of that unpaid debt. So we should be reimbursed, and that's really what I'm just wanting to see clarification.
So we'll go to Sue Davidson for answer on this one. Thank you, Sue.
Thanks, through your worship. Yes, the assumption is that we will be reimbursed. We've got the program, this is part of our program in our long-term plan. And when we're asked, I mean, I imagine there's going to be the last for asset registers at some point in time, and this will be on the asset register. And if there's any debt connected with that, we will be giving them the full register of our debt relating to Three Waters.
Thank you. So we put this one on the credit card now, yeah.
You're funded in debt then from now.
Okay, all right. Sorry, don't report that. Councillor Kerno.
I was reading this and just wondering, I'm just getting a little bit confused about the time frame. Like the project time frame is all done by the end of this year, and yet the budget looks like it's spread out over a number of years. Are we accelerating a project, or is this how it was always planned to do? I'm just not clear about that.
Yes, so the budget spreads over 10 years because there is continuous monitoring that has got to happen. So what we are proposing here is to set out a contract with this with the contractors or the suppliers of these items for a 4-year contract, so that it goes hand in hand with the Free Waters contract. So you'll find out that there's also a component of OPEX that's in there.
Right.
So those values might not be utilized now, but they will be utilized in the years that they fall in. But the contract is going to be 4 years. I don't know if it clarifies your question.
Okay, I think I get you. The CapEx part, yep, year 1 and year 2, so that takes us to the end of 22. And then the OPEX is spread out and it increases into year 3 because we've got increased costs of managing this new system.
Yeah,
Right.
and then we've got small upgrades like buying small components that last 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're completely on plan with the budget and the time frame that the budget's been spread over.
Yes.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Delavaris Woodcock, and then Councillor Vincent. Thank you.
Happy New Year, Donick. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
I have a few questions, so bear with me. You mentioned that the central server will be removed to a remote site. Could you expand on that statement, please?
So the central server for the SCADA system will be moved to a cloud system. So that is, it will be on computers that are not on site. That basically means that the people that own those data centers will give us slots in their data centers, and that means that we will not be, because our current IT team are unable to support us in SCADA, because some of the calls that we need to attend to have to be monitored 24/7. So that movement to a cloud system, they will be able to cover all that work that has got to be done 24/7.
Thank you, Don. Councillor
Thank you.
Delavaris Woodcock. Next question. Thank you.
Yes. So in the report, there's mention made of Ventia, North Cloud and Mackay's, but not Neo Consulting. Could you just clarify which of those contractors will do the work?
There is. On page 11, there is.
Ah, okay. So Neo Consulting, yes, can you expand on the portion or the 4-year contract? Which of those companies is going to be doing that primarily?
So new consulting are consulting engineers who work in the electrical and communications space, and they will be helping us in compiling the scope, providing a proper providing a scope definition for the contractor, which is Mackay's, to do the work, and also to monitor that work so that the contractor doesn't mark their own homework. And so North Cloud is also another contractor that will be working on the communications and the monitoring. And Ventia are our incumbent. They are the Three Waters contractor. So the Three Waters contractor is the user, and Mackay's is the installer of the hardware and the software. And North Cloud look after the communications, which is the internet of this SCADA system, and also the continuous monitoring of the SCADA system. And they will also be looking at the server, so they will be hosting the data center.
Thank you. That's very clear. So what I'm going to lead into my next question by repeating back my understanding. So what has been delivered in-house by IT staff previously, under this new regime, it will be contracted out. Is that correct?
The IT staff has not really been working on the SCADA system. They have never been well-resourced enough to look at it. All they do is look when there's a problem in the central server, because the central server also serves the whole Kaipara district communications and internet, and our SCADA system is also in the same server. They've had to come out and help out where they can. So that has been, but some of the miscommunications or some of the communications fallout happen in the middle of the night, like at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. So there's no dedicated staff member who will be able to go to the Dagaville server and do some work there. But what we are proposing now is going to be done by a contractor, which is North Cloud, who will be providing us a cloud-based data center.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, Councillor Vincent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm puzzled, Donick, why we got given this presentation, because my understanding is we've already made the decision to proceed. So what was it particularly that you wanted us to know? Because it wouldn't worry me if anyone had a question of the detail, as has been recently traversed, I would have referred it back to you.
Yeah. So it was more about that procurement proposal, which is very close to the threshold for the CE to sign off. That's what we wanted to present, to say that we are going to be doing direct appointments for a work that's in the vicinity of $500,000. So that's all we wanted to present for clarity, for transparency. Sorry.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification at this point? No further questions. Thank you, Donick. Thank you, Sue, for your answers here.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a further question.
Oh, right. Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock. Sorry, further question? You had said you didn't, but that's okay.
So, Donna, I can see on the internet that Neo Consulting Group, the electrical engineering group, is the contractor taking over this work. Is that correct?
New Consulting, the consultants that are presenting the scope of work and the contract, they will stop their work once the installation is finished, and then the installation will be done by Mackay's. So they are a consultant who will be doing that paperwork here, and also the. Sorry.
I can see that they're a multinational company that's working in Peru and all around the world. Did you align this procurement with the procurement policy to get local suppliers?
I'm not sure.
Can't get any more local than Mackay's.
That's right.
No, for the electrical engineer component, not the, so, and what portion is going to Neo Consulting and what portion is going to Mackay's? That's the crucial question.
Sorry,
because it's Neo Consulting.
I would actually just like to say, and that those sorts of commercial discussions, if they were being discussed by this council, would need to be discussed in a public excluded item, Councillor de Lavaris Woodcock, because these numbers, the broad numbers of the overall project are here for everybody to see. But
Mr. Mayor, I have to ask you why.
Because it is inappropriate, Councillor de Lavaris Woodcock, for this council to be discussing the business of anybody's business.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, this is ratepayers' money here.
Sorry.
And that is a very valid question.
Sorry.
Have the contracts been tendered and finished, in which case it should move to very much public domain. It's only when contracts are under negotiation that it's commercially sensitive and we keep it in the public excluded. But
that's not true, Councillor de Lavaris Woodcock. Please don't make things up. Sue Davidson, thank you.
As your governance role, we have followed the procurement policy.
Yes.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sue. So thank you, Donick. So we're following the procurement policy. And so this brings us to the end of this item. Thank you, Donick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, for this. At this point, we're adjourning this morning's briefing. We will resume at 11:45, 10:45, sorry. 10:45. So we have a 15-minute pit stop, and we will resume at 10:45 with the item regarding the Mangawhai balance tank. Thank you. Nonsense.
the straw.
Item, which is, and there's Eros, which is the Mangawhai Community Wastewater Scheme Master Plan Strategy update for us. This gift that just keeps on giving. So Sue Davidson and Eros Poshgeri, morning to you. And so Sue, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, so this is about the Mangawhai wastewater scheme and about progressing the master plan and strategy for the wastewater scheme that we have here. The last time we met, we told you that we'd be looking at getting far more information and re-looking at this at the strategy, the key parts, and adding to it. And the strategy had last been put on as part of our annual long-term plan. So this is a progression. So as more information comes in, we add to it. And one of the aims is basically to be able to inform and update the long-term plan and development, obviously development contributions if there's a flow on to that. And we brought in information from the golf club, and also obviously the balance tank is more information. So the key message is that we have a roadmap. This is progressing the roadmap further, and we're filling in the gaps. So I'll get Eros to take us through the presentation. Thanks, Scott.
Va bene.
Hi everyone, can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay, we start with that one. So I will share a presentation. Give me just 2 seconds. Should be working. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, we're going. Perfect. So let me know at any time if you got problem hearing me or seeing anything. Just okay. So as Sue said, we have developed in conjunction with the consultant a strategy in 2020. So I just passed the purpose, obviously, is to inform you all about the framework and the project that are currently underway, and the plan one based on the strategy. I will also give you a little bit of a background, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So the context, obviously, I will briefly explain you the strategy. We have a draft prepared by the consultant, and what are the next step for each key area of the scheme. So as I said before, there was already a strategy developed in 2020 that was called roadmap. Or strategy was in the LTPs referred as a roadmap. It was a really high level because back then we had so much information. Now in the last 2 years, so 2020, 2021, we ran another set of investigation. For example, we now have a calibrated model of the network. That means we got all this fancy software that can simulate scenarios now. And with those information, we can develop further the projects and know better the scheme. Obviously, it's an ongoing thing. the more information we get, the more projects and the more advanced steps we can go. Then this strategy is the most updated one. I will go through that and we'll inform the next one. Essentially, it's a live document. So in a nutshell, this is kind of the strategy. So you can see in here, can you see my mouse here moving? No? Oh, sorry. Can you see my mouse? Anyway, so on the top, we got the timeline, indicative timeline with the years. So we planned until the moment until 2028. And the key stream of work. So the scheme is made of essentially, I will go through the balance tank in a minute, but the network, that is everything from the toilet, bluntly speaking, to the treatment plant. So everything that brings the wastewater to the plant. That is a key part, obviously, of the scheme. That is pipes, pump station, and all the work associated with the catchment. We got the treatment plant, that is at Tama Road, and then we got the disposal. So everything from the treatment plant to the Branch Road farm, essentially. That is the pump, the pipe, and the disposal field. Okay. Then we got other streams here. That is the balance tank is in itself is part of the treatment plant, but we left alone at the moment because it's under construction. We got community engagement. I will discuss that later on. And then we got the golf course as a separate item. Again, that is a disposal option, but we consider that in isolation for now. So these are all the streams we are working on, or we intend to work on in the strategy. So I will dive down a little bit in this part. So 2022, I will go down in more details, what we're trying or what we aim to do this year and what is already underway. You will see here that obviously there's a long-term plan. So we're not looking at this year, but we have a strategy to move forward for each individual stream with the end result, for example, for the network planning, to have a network strategy for that will inform capital projects to put in the LTP by the end of this year. And then for each project has growth happen, we'll build this, we'll build the project, a new pipeline, a new pump station, or an upgrade of the existing pump station as growth occurs. So we're focusing also on the network. The treatment plant is a little bit a bigger beast to tackle, a bigger project to tackle. And so we are working on, again, to have a construction in the next 3 years, more or less, and to convert the reactor in 2028. Again, all this is dependent on growth, on the pace of the growth. Disposal option, again, this is a longer stream because you need to look at the option, environmental assessment, where we need to go, especially community engagement. There are several options. Then we need to look at consenting paths, procure, and construct whatever we need to construct. So it's a longer path here. And obviously we got the golf course. There's another disposal area, essentially for us, but this has got a short time frame because it's already advanced in the bigger scheme. So what we're planning or what we've done this year. I say 2022 is end of 2021. So in 2021/22, we have completed term of reference. So for an advisory group, so we aim to put together an advisory group of about 10 members, 8, 9, 10 members, I don't remember the exact number, including the community, including Manafenua, including council, infrastructure team, so on. So this group is an informal group, as not power authority delegation. It's just an informal working group, and to provide feedback in advance for the entire scheme. So this group will be aware of all the working stream that I just mentioned before. We aim to get this group together this/next month and start the meetings. Balance tank, obviously, you probably are aware of that. The contract has been awarded and now is under construction with the aim to complete end of this year. Nectar planning, as I said, last year, about September, end of last year, we finished finally this model. Now we currently, and also we develop projection, growth projection into each catchment. What means that this pump station takes the flow from this area. This area is currently, for example, 50% developed. What may happen when this area grows? So the pump station might be need upgrade. We might need more pipes due to growth, not renewal. What I'm talking about is always growth. So what we're aiming to do this year in this area, as I said, is running a system performance. Essentially, what are the critical components of today's infrastructure? So is the infrastructure at current under pressure? What are the hotspots? So we know already if growth happens, what we may face. Example, the terminal pump station. The last pump station is normally a key one because everything flows through that pump station. And as I said, inform on key projects so we can have a vision on the catchment, what are the magnitude of budget. So what we're talking about. And that is for this year. The treatment plant, it's not recently, but we have completed in 2019 an optioneering study for the entire treatment plant that told us what are the different options, 5,000 connections, 7,000 connections, if we discharge to the ocean, if we discharge to the harbor, or if we discharge to land. Depending the way we dispose, the treatment plant need to be adjusted. So the driver is where we're going to dispose will inform what type of treatment plant we need. There are some key items that are the same for each disposal, like the reactor is the same for every option, but the more other items will depend. So we may need to add some treatment depending on where we go. And also we've done a lot of work last year to respond to the auditors that were asking a lot of questions. So what we're doing this year, we are currently underway. We are testing the effluent coming to the treatment plant for the load. So we know the flow. So we got the pattern of the flow, how much comes, but the characteristic of the flow are not really, I would say, are not well known. So we do more sample now because as we know, the load in Mangafai is pretty concentrated, so the effluent is very concentrated. So we need to define that. This will inform what type of treatment we need to do, or what is the best treatment. And also, based on this information, we start relook at the initial optioneering study and detail more what are the type of treatment and cost that more likely to happen. The disposal field, that is we say that is the most critical item because it's a long-term item. At the moment, we have a number of investigations underway. One is a report to identify suitable land in the vicinity of Mangafai. So where is the land where we can dispose? On the same stream, we're looking at optimize the current disposal field that has got some limitation. So removing this limitation will give us more capacity. We're looking at short, medium, and long-term option. Then we need to put on the table the option of the harbor and ocean outfall. I was just in the strategies, there is a brief mention to that, like Snell Beach and Algae Beach, I believe, in Warkworth. They recently adopted an harbor outfall. So it's something that we want to explore. And last, once we got a little better understanding on the land disposal, especially start environmental assessment. That is for the long term for the disposal. In the short term, we propose to go down to the path of the golf course. As mentioned to you in previous presentation, this will give us about 400, 500 connection. So will give us a boost in terms of land disposal. And we already developed last year a concept design. We discussed with Manafenua, we discussed with the golf course club. So there is a momentum, I would say, at the moment, and we haven't seen opposition in that respect from community and Manafenua. And yes, so we got a good concept already developed. We got an estimate that is higher on what was budgeted before. I think from memory is about 6 to 6.5 million, the higher range. And what we're looking at is start environmental assessment for the resource consent, so we can unlock this option this year. Let me see. Okay, so in terms of community engagement, that I think is a critical point to inform the community. So the advisory group has got comms as part of the members. So we got communication, got Manafenua, we're still building this, but we also propose to have a business association representative in there, so we can kind of catch the entire Magafai. And we will keep, that will be the way how we inform about the strategy and the scheme. Yeah, so what are the next steps? So the strategy, the document that has been prepared by the consultant has got some key bullet points at the bottom. We propose to go and essentially do what I just pretty much said in this presentation, keep going with the investigation, identify key projects, and identify what is missing, if it's missing in the LTP. What is likely to happen, the more investigation will drive to more projects like pump station upgrade, pipe renewals, pipe upgrade, even the land disposal. We don't even know at the moment what, so we know more or less what are the options, but we don't know where the stream, where we want to go. So once we got that agreed, we'll probably be able to inform how much. And the more we work, the more they will maintain the strategy updated, so everyone knows where we're at and what is the path forward. That's it, pretty much.
Gracias. So elected members, are there questions of Eros or Sue at this point? We go to Councillor Curnow and Councillor Weddy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eros. Just the costs associated with the golf course are obviously.
Councillor Curnow, excuse me, could you direct your voice to the microphone just so Eros can hear?
The costs associated with the golf course are obviously higher than we were anticipating. Are any of those costs, any factors in those costs, things that will be beneficial to other options that are later required?
So, Yes, so, okay, so apology, can you repeat the question? I heard about the cost of the golf course are higher than anticipated.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if any components of those costs can be beneficial to later parts of the wider project, or are they
Yeah, so,
added specific to the golf course?
okay, so the golf course is a short-term solution, but will be maintained in the long run. So what means that the golf course will provide approximately 400 to 500 connections, just barely speaking, here, high level. So in the future, we were looking for, assuming we go to 5,000 connections, we were looking at disposal field able to take 5,000 minus 500 connections. So the golf course is a short-term option because we can implement in a short time frame, but will be part of the scheme until the golf course will exist, I would say. So it's not a temporary expenditure. That will be a permanent. So we'll be part of the scheme as long as the scheme will keep going.
And just so I think what we can do though, can look at is the Mayor's Park itself. Yeah, that might be something we look at in the future as a possibility. And yes, then the till and the pipe from the Thelma Road would be valuable for that as well. Okay, so there are potential. I have one other question, if it's all right. In one of the videos I was watching on Three Waters, they were talking about an innovation in Australia where they're actually building in this sort of innovation space, they're building little detention tanks with each house so that the houses are connected electronically to the plant so that the detention tanks only release when the plant has capacity to manage it. So rather than building a plant to manage this much capacity, you're building it to manage that much capacity all the time. Is that something we can look at, or is it being considered?
Excuse me, councillor Kerner, could you just, there's a lot of reverberation. Are you directing your questions to the microphone?
I'm trying to, but I'll no, it hasn't, the answer is no, that hasn't been considered. At the moment, we'd have to look at legislation. I mean, that's an entirely different premise. So,
I can respond to here. So just for a minute. So the question was, there are systems in Australia, not only in Australia, that there are some detention tank, we can call that storage tank at each property, and an intelligent network that manage the way how the network operates, so to not flood essentially at the same time the treatment plant. Is that I'm correct? What I'm referring?
That's what I was interested in.
So that is part of the network planning. Obviously, is this part of the catchment part of thing? It's not the treatment plant, and that will be looked at the network level. Mindful there are pros and cons of each solution, because the more you hold the water somewhere, the more gets septic. So we'll have, and we already seen that problem in Manga 5 with high sulfuric attack from the effluent, because it sit pretty much longer. But this part, so it's something that we will look at the network level, but is a new system. This is a new system, need to be tried, got some cost. So in a nutshell, this is one of the key stream of the network planning.
That's cool. I'm just happy to hear that it's actually being looked at as a possibility. Yeah.
Thank you, councillor Webby. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A couple of, one point of clarification and another question after that. I noticed both in your paper, Sue, and in Erica's presentation, you're talking about keeping council updated on an as-needs basis. Now, bearing in mind, after roads, probably the single issue that is interest right across the district, east to west, is the Manga Wastewater plant, because of the impact it has had on rates, etc. This plant, or this project originally saw the demise of the then council, the government appointed commissioners to govern the district for 4 years, and I'd just like to flesh out how you came to the decision that this council should only be on a needs to know basis on this, because I see this as being fundamental. I constantly get reference from the community about what's going on, and I'd be quite uncomfortable if I'm finding that it's on a needs to know basis, because that's not the way the community sees the elected body. We've got to be informed. And I'm just wondering, what was the basis for that decision? Because a big presentation.
I'll answer that because you will be informed when there's any costs that come into this, but if it's just the normal day-to-day business and we've already planned for it, it's where there's a change in plans that we would need to come to you. That's where we'd say, or there's extra funding that we would need. So, and we'll also have one representative of council on this advisory group. So that will be the advisory group we're proposing would include iwi, a business association representative, Mangapai Matters representative, and council representative. I think there's and plus relevant staff and consultants in that group. So and we'll have a comms person there as well. But so far, in the last 3 months, we've talked to you 3 times about it because there are some, because the strategy was being evolved and we wanted to bring you up to speed with that. So if there were major changes or we were going away from it, then obviously we would come to council.
I can understand fair comment. I still think that, this is just my personal opinion, that this council, the elected members, need to be briefed at least on a quarterly basis, as an absolute minimum, on progress, because what we see, just to have a communication when things have perhaps the budget or done something like that, does not actually give us the knowledge about why council is going down a particular design path. Now, for example, the second question, this is now leading to the question on the golf course, but talking about pushing the boundaries. Now, I know there's a number of options, and I don't know whether they've been all properly researched. Some of them, and I've talked to a number of people, including yourself, about staging this so that it has less impact on the cash flow for the council. But secondly, it makes sure that the system that's been proposed will work. It can be fine-tuned if there needs to be before it's rolled out over the rest of the golf course. With all these things, I've got no idea whether that's been taken seriously or whether people have actually done any preliminary work to measure how that would fit in with a time plan, because it has some significant impacts on both how successful the program at the golf course will be and also on the cost that will occur, and we can stage it. We don't have to put it all at once. These are all things that I have got no knowledge. People ask me all the time, I don't know, and I just don't think that's acceptable to the crowd. This is such a high profile project.
So at the moment, we haven't got, we've only got a 1.5 million in for the golf course. So we know what we believe we've got the right option, which our consultants will be advising us, then we will bring it to council.
But don't you think we should have an opportunity to quiz the consultants? Because some of the stuff that I see in their papers are things that I would personally like to debate with them, and we never have that opportunity. And yet we're expected to be at the government level, finally signing off on the.
That's what the advisory committee will be doing as well, but I wouldn't see that as a governance role. The details of staff and consultants, and they've got the knowledge and the expertise.
Thank you. Sue, I have a question for you, or Eros, on page 2 of your report under other investigations. The second point here, investigation is underway to identify potential options to optimise the saturation of the Brown Road dispersal to farmland, currently at 70%. The aim of this work is to allow more disposal onto the existing field. If we put the infrastructure in place and we can do more exposure onto the existing field, would seem to me as a low-hanging fruit way to deal with increasing need for disposal or quantum to be disposed of. Could you share any of the thinking around that? It's my read on that, right?
So what we're trying to do is optimise the assets that we have, the use of the assets that we have. We don't think that's going to be a step action, so we still think we're going to have to look at disposal because if we're going to have to look at going to 5,000, there are certain steps you've got to take. So we're fine tuning things, but so we're looking at now a resource consent allows us to disperse wastewater at a certain rate. We're only doing it to 70% of that. And part of that's because the system works by you turn on the sprinklers on one site and you don't have to be running on the other. But there's obviously, if we can put more pumps in, we might be able to pump water up so you're actually watering far more. Because the aim is, over the summer period, to reduce the amount of water in the storage pond so it can fill up again when we have peak storms during the winter. So that's the sort of thing we're looking at the moment, whether we need to put more pumps up there, how we can manage that better.
Thank you. So it's about kind of efficiency and tweaking rather than, as you say, a kind of step development. Okay, thank you. That clarification there. Councillor De La Varas Woodcock, question?
Yes, I have many more than one. Thank you, Eros, for your presentation. That was very helpful. So I start my question is, are you aware of the history of the Mangawhai wastewater scheme?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So were you aware that the land purchase, this council budgeted for the disposal 380,000, and the eventual cost of purchasing Browns Road and the attendant construction of reticulation to there ended up being 14 million, which is a 3,584% increase using the percentage calculator.
Really relevant. So, sorry, and so your question about how we're going forward with the strategy, Councillor De La Varas Woodcock?
Yes, it's very important, this matter.
Yes, sorry, Councillor De La Varas Woodcock, we all have read the hundreds and hundreds of pages on this. Thank you. And the community knows it as well. So your point regarding the strategy, please, that we're discussing here today, because so far what you're talking about is irrelevant to today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I disagree, but never mind. We'll keep going. I have many questions. So the high sulfuric acid attack that you mentioned in the storage, does this pose implications for effluent retained in the balance tank and the other CAS tanks at present in terms of corrosion of the concrete and the pipe work system?
No, simply there are some operational, I would say, mechanism. Like if you install a new pump station, you install a new plastic pump station, like is common everywhere around the country. There are some, so it's not, for respond to your question, it's not a problem for the concrete structure at the treatment plant. And we have never experienced problem on that respect.
So what is the high sulfuric component a problem for?
So generally speaking, is more an odor issue around the catchment. So there might some pump station that might be smelly, and we experienced, for example, in the past at the pump station at the in front of Council Mangawhai. That means that we need to put other system in place, like the green dome, the green bubbly thing that you can see across every pump station. And we might need to look at the lid, the concrete lid of pump stations, so they may have some damage at the bottom. is mainly another issue, mainly with the infrastructure is brand new in Mangawhai, so we don't have big problem of that, but we need to be aware of that in the long run. So when we plan, we need to be aware of that.
Thank you. So can you confirm, Eros, how many connections there are today, as of today?
I obviously can't do it today, but I can tell you at the 31st of December, there was 2,502 connections.
Okay, thank you. That's slightly, well, yeah, so the report says 2,411. So that's,
Okay. So
okay.
you're going to be using figures from the long-term plan.
Right. So having the cost estimate, the original cost estimate for disposal to the golf course was 1.5, and now we've got an increase up to 6.1 from 4.2. And on the report in the strategy timeline, it says construction on wastewater treatment plant beginning in 23. Is that for the disposal field?
Yeah, so I can respond to that. So there is a component, obviously, to move the effluent from the treatment plant to the golf course. We can divide roughly the system in two components. One is the council component, that is the pump, any pipes or valves that goes from the treatment plant to the storage, that is will be located in the car park of the golf course. So that is the infrastructure to bring the effluent up the hill. And then the disposal component that is gone from the storage, because obviously the wastewater treatment plant produce effluent during the day and the golf course disposal will be overnight. So you need to have a balance in the middle. That from that storage to the golf course, there will be another pump, another irrigation system. So these are the two main components. So
can you please describe the storage at the golf course? What is it?
Is an above ground. So what we envisage at the moment and what is budgeted in that concept design is 500 cubic meters. It's a big steel tank, essentially, that will be, there is in the report, the location is in council land, but it's car park on the top and on the left hand side of the golf course. Is a steel, above ground steel tank, prefabricated, green, and will all the waste until the golf course is able to discharge. This is a modular system. So if we want to push more water, at the moment we play conservative, only 500. But if the golf course is able to accept more, we can increase the storage, another 500, and so on until we reach the maximum of the disposal.
Thank you. So there are many inconsistencies between the WSP and the council's position in the introductory report, such as the staff are saying the whole system is underutilized, whereas the engineers have said that there's several capacity limits at different points in the system, namely the crucial one being Browns Road at capacity. So what are we expected to make of that? Could you address that issue?
So as it says, there are different streams. So for the disposal, land disposal, we got the existing one, that is the Browns Road Farm, and we are working with the operation to maximize what can be discharged at the field. There are many constraints: the wind, the farm, the type of system, how we irrigate. So we're looking at currently on how to optimize that. So yes, we reach the capacity under the current operation, or we are reaching the limit. We are approaching the limit under the current operation. If we tweak the operation, we think we can get more because the weather and also sort of constraint. The golf course is new, so it's something that we will
Indeed. So so my question then, we're talking about the golf course here. What element in the current treatment regime that we have with the sand filter and the cast tanks, what residue is there that will be applied in the treated effluent to the golf course? Is there chlorine, fluoride, anything? What?
So as of now, we can take the effluent as it is and dispose to the golf course. If and this is what has the design been based. So we are not adding treatment. We just take the effluent as it is and is going to the disposal at Browns Road.
It's already up to a very high grade Victorian sea. Yeah, so it's already up to a very high grade Victoria.
Yes, I'm aware of that, but I'm just, I am wondering why, if we are relying for current growth on this golf course, that the environmental assessment hasn't been done yet.
So we have done a preliminary planning assessment that flagged all the environmental risks. Example, groundwater. Example, health and safety from Tamata ROI. At the moment, at the time of the design, Tamata ROI was not in place, so we're talking with DHB. So this in the concept design has been flagged all these items, and before we're going down to our proper environmental assessment, we need to do more investigation. We need to spend money, so we wanted to make sure council was on board to go ahead with the golf course.
And thank you, Eros. What would we do if the application was not consented and if stakeholders were not to agree? Where would we put the 450 to 500 new connections that we need? Where would we dispose of that?
Yeah, that will be part of the auctioneering. So if we take off the card the golf course in the next 3 years, we need to make sure that we got another. So an example, we need to optimize the existing one. So we need to find spare capacity in the existing system, or the other immediate short-term option will be buy land or use the farm of some neighbor farm that are willing to take the effluent for that reason. So we can't magically make this appear. So we'll try to squeeze as much as we can, essentially.
Yeah, or looking at potential sports parks, that sort of thing.
Okay, so there's a lot of maybes. But now my final question.
Councillor De La Barras Woodcock, sorry, I just paused you for a second. Sue Davidson has further answered here.
No, I was right. It's a strategy that basically is growing or populating as we go. When we know the direction we're going in, and there's a lot of options.
Lots of options, and we cross some of those bridges as we come to them, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
Rather logical approach. Councillor De La Barras Woodcock. Question?
Yes. So I have 3 more questions. So I've returned to my how I framed my question to Eros at the cost blowout from the last debacle, woeful saga. And in the WSP report, firstly, it says that the cost estimates will follow at the end of this document, but there are none. But if we can learn from our mistakes of the past, which we should do, please, we had this 3,584% cost blowout in purchasing land for disposal. If this report signals to landowners around the district, as it does, that farmland will have to be purchased to enable a growth to 5,000 connections from our current 2,501, are we not, Sue and Eros, a captive buyer? We are going to be completely at the mercy of landowners that want to charge what they want. Is that correct?
No, I don't think that's correct. I don't think And as I said, one of the options is to look at whether land disposal, and that's one of the reasons why we have to keep reviewing it, because the costs change, and so we have to re-look at whether ocean outfall or harbour land disposal the right option in the end for the higher volumes of population that we're going to have moving to Mangawhai.
So Eros,
not determining that now.
So
in
that
the
is
current
why
regime, in the current wastewater treatment world, is disposal to ocean considered the best environmental choice?
there is no best, because depend what the community wants. So the ocean outfall will have pro and cons, as well all the other ones. So we are in New Zealand, we are on an island, so we got the blessing of having the ocean everywhere and really at our hand, and is an option, but that will come to a cost and a time frame. To build an ocean outfall, you don't wake up in the morning and you just build an ocean outfall in 2 days. So that is why we need to watch carefully what option we're going. Another option is the harbor, for example. We got the harbor next door. We pretty much have not even a K from the treatment plant, and we can use that, but will come a cost. So at the moment, if you look at the WSP optioneer report, the ocean outfall is the most expensive option.
At 37 million, is that correct?
I need to look at the report, but essentially
Thereabouts.
there are three options. That is the ocean, harbor, and land. So we're not discarding any of them, and this is why in the strategy there is the longest path, the disposal option. So at the moment, as I said, we are looking at land. We have a report underway from the consultant that is telling us where could be the land available with a certain soil type, slope, what is the possible. That will give us a good view of what we can do around Mangawhai. And then in parallel, we'll need to start bringing on the ocean outfall and the harbor outfall as that additional option. Then based on the response from the community, from councillors, from you, and from everyone, we need to then make a decision what is the option we need to chase.
Thank you. So my last two questions. So in the report, there's a statement which I find quite incredible, that KDC cannot control the growth, i.e. the statement, would you agree that this is false, that our council in its consenting process for new subdivisions cannot consider that the existing wastewater treatment plant is nearly at capacity, and therefore we need to put the cart, we need to put the horse before the cart. We need to get this sorted, and that I see into my final point, which is the most important, is that the current 77.
Sorry, do you have a question there, Councillor De Olivares?
Yes.
There was a question there.
There it is. You have allowed many people to make statements that are not questions, but never mind. Is the for example, we've got 77 new connections. We have, you know, growth at the door waiting. The current development contributions that people have been paying are completely insufficient for the cost blowouts that we're already looking at for this treatment plant as it is today. So 6.1 million for the disposal to the golf course, and that's beginning in 23 in this inflationary situation, economic situation that we're in. And what this council knows, the balance tank, we budgeted it at 1.5, it went up to 5 million. So that's, is it correct that the 77 new development connections that have just in the last year connected have paid a development contribution of more or less 28,000 completely at a discount? And that will then be worn by the ratepayers of this district in terms of paying for the loan all of the district from Aranga to Tangawahine to Potor to Mangaturoto, we all pay for the interest, 50% of that.
Sorry, Councillor De La Varas.
Am I correct? Please, can I have my question answered? Our development contributions are woefully inadequate.
Incorrect.
So what happens, Councillor De Varas, is that the council has the option of recalculating development contributions to include new capital expenditure at the minimum every 3 years. We are, as staff, we're proposing that we do it as soon as we understand the value, and that's why we're doing the strategy to basically understand the costs better, with a view that we would look at development contributions in the 23-24, do an amendment to the long-term plan. So that's happened for everyone, not just the developers that are coming now. That's happened in the past as well, where, as you know, capital expenditure it becomes solidifies and you understand the costs, then you change your development contributions. So it could be said the same since we started with the system. That people are fortunate because if costs are going up, but we catch up. So it's not a.
I'd also like
You
to,
say-
Councillor De La Varas Woodcock, I would also like to add, of course, that it was reported to us 1 year ago, one whole year ago, that the people of all of the district of Kaipara stopped paying for their portion of the district-wide portion of the Mangawhai Wastewater Scheme debt in early.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
So please don't go scaring the people of Kaipara wide across the district, Kaipara, that they are still paying for a project which they are not. Councillor,
Wait a minute, we are paying 50% of the interest on any loan, correct? That is taken, that needs to be taken, the whole district. Am I right, Sue? And can you please remember that my surname is De La Varas Woodcock? Am I right, Sue?
Yes, you are correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you please note that for our ratepayers? I am correct.
It's noted in our LTP and it was a council decision.
So if we are to purchase or $37 million to put Ocean Outfall, for example, which in this regime will double to 60 or 70 million, because that's what the costs are in this inflationary regime, are we, that cost, the interest, which is going up, is going to be borne by all the ratepayers at 50%. We will be all paying for Mangawhai's wastewater scheme at 50% of the interest charged.
So that will be considered at the time of each development contribution. And that's under the development contribution policy, not under what we're discussing now, which is the strategy for the Mangawhai wastewater.
Yeah, so we need to remain.
It's important so that we need, as a district, we have already paid for this regime before.
Sorry, Councillor De La Varas Woodcock, thank you for the last half hour of entertainment. Thank you. We're going to hear from Councillor Weddy and then Councillor Wills. Thank you.
Yeah, just one point of clarification, but I must say, Errol, and this is a question to you. Really, the WSP paper that you've included in this presentation spells out options. We haven't seen which are the preferred options. We haven't seen detailed cost estimates or anything else. So this is very early stages, and we shouldn't be getting into the detail that we've just been talking about because we haven't got sufficiently fixed information to be able to make a judgment. But what I'd like to query you on here was in the WSP report on the treatment plant, and again, looking at disposal options, you're talking about in the disposal options that a local harbour discharge, now for elected members, this is one option that's been discussed way back, where you put actually the treated wastewater into the inner harbour on the outgoing tides, only on the outgoing tides, and that's substantially cheaper than a full coastal outfall. But you make that, or the WSP make the comment that the local harbour discharge is substantially cheaper then a land disposal option because it avoids land purchase, et cetera, But it is contingent, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that if we were to have that as our favourite option, we would also have to put onto the into the treatment plant a membrane bioreactor and an ultraviolet disinfection plant, so that the level or the quality level of the effluent, treated effluent going into the inner harbour on the outgoing tide would be acceptable. Is that correct? Now, is that taken into account to the capital cost estimate that they made that comment that it is still substantially cheaper? So it's still substantially cheaper after the cost of a membrane bioreactor and ultraviolet disinfection, because it's contingent upon those two extra pieces of capital going in to make the quality of the discharge acceptable for an inner harbour discharge.
So, okay, so I can go. So what I said at the beginning is, depending on the way of disposal, the type of treatment need to be adjusted, and that is in the option report. So what WSP report is saying is that including the treatment component, that is the membrane, the UV disinfection, that option will be cheaper. You're correct. So this is mainly on cost. And what as we need to do is to this is why I'm saying on the table we're not considering only land disposal, but we need to discuss the harbor and the ocean outfall. But while cost is less, there will be probably environmental will be more environmental assessment to be done, and we need to have a buy from the community on that. So there are pros and cons, as I said at the beginning, for each option that are not only cost.
Thank you, Councillor Wills. Thank you. I've got 3 or 4 questions. If I know was, no, please. I've got, and it's not to do with the questions or the options. It's more to do with the modelling and the assumptions, which is what I think this is designed for. So first of all, how many is the current connections? You said at the end of the
2,502.
Sorry, apologies, but I hear metallic noise, so it comes really hard to hear. Apologies for that.
No, can you understand? Oh, I'm not alone. Can you understand me? That's good. That's better than most. I'm asking questions about your modelling and your assumptions, okay, for the future. Not so much about the specific options and costs. So my first question is that you, on page 2, you start off with an assumption there's an off-peak and an on-peak number of people per household and the water consumption per person. Then you use the spatial plan numbers, which are the off-peak numbers and the off-peak population as your base for some of your modelling. And I'm asking why you've used that when it's half as many people per household and half as much water per person. And the reason I'm challenging that basis is that already in 3 years, we're running at something like 200 connections since 2018 baseline. It means our high growth is already almost an underestimate of future growth based on its last couple of years. So that's my first question, sorry. Can you speak to the modelling assumptions you've made? Because that's to do with the worst case for us is to have to make an instant decision because we've been caught with a lack of capacity.
So in terms of the assumption, we got a different way, or the consultant that has a different way to test their assumption is we got the effluent at the treatment plant. So no matter what, how many people we assume there are in each house, the flow at the treatment plant daily and instant is monitored. So that assumption has always been corroborated. The assumption is pretty much based on the infometric data that we use, that is the data that are being used to inform the spatial planning. So internally, we are trying to use the same database, so we all speak the same language, district plan and consultant in the infrastructure area. and their assumption has been elaborated based on I don't know exactly detail of that, so I need to respond to the question. I need to go back to the consultant, what exactly the data they've done at the back, but it's not a number thrown up in the air. We got monitoring underway, and we have done a lot of modeling last year to corroborate those assumptions, especially in the catchment modeling exercise. So we had instruments put across the entire network that measure the flow and corroborate the data. Also with the modeling now we can replicate, and this is a report that has been done by WSP, to replicate what the data, so the measurement that we receive in different storm, in different event with the model, so we can elaborate scenario. But essentially that, if you want a response exact of where this 2.7 and why not 2.8 or why it's up 2.9 come from, I need to go back to the consultant for that exact detail.
No, sorry, but the statistics you used in your presentation that we've received is based on the off-peak low number. Surely the facility has to have capacity for peak.
Good, thanks. I'm in now, so it's all good.
Yeah. Can you help me too with that?
No, they haven't used the low, like at the moment, I can tell you that last year, the number of subdivisions, and this is new subdivisions coming that we consented was 61. But the number that connected last year was slightly higher than that. And some of that, yeah, so.
When you say slightly higher, it's gone from 1860 to 2,500 in 3 years.
Yes, it has. That's not because it's,
It's not just consensus, it's existing buildings joining on.
yeah. But that's because we've had a lot of different pockets of different areas. Like, we took 70 connections 2 years ago from Moore Street, the caravan park. We joined that on. Park View was 100 and something. So a lot of those are a whole group of areas where they had their own septic tank previously, and we've joined them on. So there's a number. So that's come.
Sorry, please bear with me. The questions are not at the detail, it's just at this level, because there are assumptions built in here that we've got at least 10 years minimum before we reach 5,000 connections. But modelling on what's happened for the last 3 years, we're actually going to get there a lot more quick than this assumptions assumes. And those are major capital. It's not so much the amount of money, it's the timing of when they're going to come up. Because it takes years to plan. So I'm going to stick to my questions, sorry, rather than make statements. That was my concern about the modelling. The accuracy of it is good enough that it is 10 or 15 years out before they have to spend significant more amounts of money on that.
No, we're not saying that. We have to spend significant amounts of money in this next 10 years.
But there's assumptions in there. But anyway, I just asked, I'm challenging the
Well, no, we are looking at, my understanding is that we look at the peak flows, but and that doesn't happen that often, but it's primarily when there are storms. And the balance tank's going to give us a lot of, sort of, that's going to solve the immediate problems there with storms, surges, and then we'll look at the disposal. And that's obviously the other end, because there's different capacities, different parts of the plant. The two immediate ones that we're looking at is the disposal fields and obviously coming into the plant, which is why council has agreed a balance tank.
I'm trying to move on because I appreciate we've had quite a bit of time on this one, but it's a strategic thing. It's not an operational. So I'm keeping my questions at that level. There's also a sentence on page 5. Building codes are enforced. The daily peak increase will be about 3 times average. That's frightening to think that the only reason we're coping is because we're not enforcing the building codes.
No, so what they imply, and probably is a wrong statement there, is the current system has got, so we know that there are houses that have got their own septic tank and they're not connected to they are in the connectable area and then are able to connect. So this is existing essentially, it's not growth. So we got a pocket of houses around Mangawhai connectable area that can be connected.
Sorry, sorry, that's not answering my question, because the comment I just made, or my question, is actually around the fact that it then goes on to say regarding rainwater tanks overflowing and that water ending up in the system. So it's not so much about the number of connections as the fact that there's no stormwater capacity, so it's ending up in the wastewater. But it's only
so that is a modeling question, because what we're doing with the so with the calibration, so what with the model we can do, we have estimated how much is the infiltration into the system. So we got two scenarios. It's not raining, we got dry weather, we got a nice summer day, and what's coming into the plant. And then we got a similar day, maybe a Sunday or a Saturday, and we got a water bomb, just bluntly speaking here. So the system, we look at that. So the consultant look at that, and the system what reacted, I think from memory, I think was 2 times or 1.5 the flow. So it means that the system is really well, it's brand new. So we don't have much infiltration. So generally speaking, the standard allows for 5 times the flow. So in a peak weather event, the flow coming at the treatment plant is 5 times what you get from a dry period. In this instance, in Mangawhai, we normally receive 1.5 to 2 times, means that the system is well insulated. Means that there will be always some. It's impossible to get bulletproof in that respect, but we are pretty much at that point. So we have some rainwater tanks that may discharge in the system. There may some joint across along the pipeline that are leaking. That is the problem of having a wastewater network or any network. But Mangawhai network is well positioned in that respect. So, and we discussed that before a long time ago, I remember, in the presentation.
May I quickly ask a quick one?
So
has anything looked at improving the stormwater capacity? I'm just asking.
Yeah, so we look at the benefits.
As an option, as opposed to spending more and more money on wastewater, has there been options looked at improving the stormwater capacity in Mangawhai?
So the stormwater and this wastewater are two different networks, two different systems. So we can get someone going around and check all the rainwater tanks connection in Mangawhai, but we believe that this is an exercise that will not provide any benefit, because the system as it is really well, it's new, and there are no, so the model telling us the infiltration rate, that means leakage, rainwater, so the sum of everything else that can go in is really low. So
this and my last question, thank you, sorry, I'll keep going. And my last question is, there's an assumption made that potable water will not arrive in Mangawhai for, I think it's something like at least 10 years, or till after the 5,000 connections take place. I'm asking a question. I assume that there's a significant increase in water consumption when potable water is available as opposed to tank water. What happens to your modelling if that pipeline comes down from Wongo, for example, and we actually end up with, there's an assumption in there that there's off-peak 15,000 people are going to live in Mangawhai in 20 years' time. Let's just, and work on the statistics, it's going to be higher than that. You're almost getting up to a mini, not city, but large town scale. There will be an expectation that those facilities, like potable water, will be available at some point. My question is, how much does that push your modelling around if that comes earlier than 10 years?
So as it stands, the moment Magafai doesn't have a water supply, just a little treatment plant in Fagan Place that supply the camping ground. So what the consultant is saying us is, if you allow people to have potable supply at their doorstep, generally speaking, they tend to use more. And that is what we found in other catchment and other area of the plan. So so that is a factor to consider. But in our strategy, we need to be realistic of when and if this water supply may come. There's been water study probably 6 years ago, if I remember correctly. But anyway, so around Magafai, there are no other sources at the moment available to supply the town. And so this is why we haven't looked at something that is realistic in the short time frame, because the strategy, what is looking at the moment, is the first 5-6 years, or up to 2028. So if we want to expand the strategy to the next 10 years, or after the next 10 years, we can do that, but will be more a really high guess. I don't know if that answers your question.
We control it by the district plan, by the section sizes, so that they can put a tenant on their section at the moment.
Thank you for my question. Okay, thank you. I have a question for you. Today is World Wetlands Day. Yay for World Wetlands Day. So in the spirit of that, and looking at the land disposal options with Browns Road, is the options paper that the consultant is currently preparing considering how or in what ways the resource consent could be changed if all of Browns Road were turned into a wetland? And what is the potential for that? Different land use rather than pasture, flax bushes, cabbage trees, so on and so on and so on. And so it's actually now a wetland with a significant larger amount of water being disposed of there. Is your report going to consider an option such as that, which would be relatively low capital intensive? It's part of the Kaipara Harbour catchment. It may be able to get trees, plants at very low cost, so on and so on and so on. There's a whole business model there. Is your report going to potentially consider that on World Wetlands Day?
Take that on board.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Elected members, I think we're at the end of on that World Wetland Day point. I think that's exhausted everybody on the subject for now. Understanding it's a work in progress. Thank you, Eros. Molto grazie. Thank you, Sue, for your presentation here. And elected members, I'd like, with just 5 minutes to go, just to draw us to the end of this briefing for today. This is the end of our agenda. So I'd like to thank our visiting participants online and guests in the room as well for your attendance at this first Kaipara District Council briefing of the year. As you can see, we're going to have a ripper of a year. So at this point, I'm going to close with a karakia. Kia tau nā manakitanga te mea ngāro ki runga ki teina a tātou kia mahia te hua makihikihi. Kia toita kupu, toita mana, toita araha, toita reo Māori, tihei Māori ora.
Kia ora.